Hello, everyone. Very good afternoon to you all. And this is Krishna Idathil, Director of Enterprise Solution Services, part of CTO-CIA organization here. And our department, along with the Chief Information Security Officer's office, is responsible for the PCLS report. And we are here for a 1-hour webinar on the upcoming PCLS report. We will be sharing this deck, and we will post it to the calendar. And recordings will be available on our YouTube channel. And this is considered as a meeting, and unfortunately, we will not be issuing any education credit for this. And if you have any questions, please, there is a chat window, the questions window, and if you can type it, we have our team monitoring the questions and flagging it appropriately so that we can answer those questions. The hand raise button, please use that whenever we ask for a survey or any questions. So please participate so that this can be as engaging as possible given the technology we have. The objective of this call is mainly to provide you a heads up on the upcoming PCLS report. PCLS stands for, as you all know, Prioritization of Cybersecurity and Legacy Systems Study. As most of you are, we are also awaiting for an LAR instructions for the same. I'm hoping that we will soon have that instruction with us. And this would provide you a time frame to prepare for all the questions, the 50+ questions that we have, and prepare you the answer as soon as the SPECTRIM tool is available for your submission. And our submission is due to the LBB by 1st of October. And we have a very good agenda. We have, both the department, the CTO-CIO department, and also the CISO department participating in this session. John Hoffman, who is our, Chief Technology Officer, and also the interim state CIO, backfilling Todd Kimbriel, who retired recently. And we have Robert, Benajam from our team. And then from Office of the Chief Information Security Officer, we have Nancy Reynosek, who is a state CISO. I'm very happy that she's able to, join our call. And Matt Kelly, our Governance, Risk, and Compliance Program Manager, who is also the brain behind the evolution of the questionnaire and making sure the questions have its right weightage, and is also addressed the entire evolution of this edition of the questionnaire. And we also have Elizabeth Cooper, who is our Director of Policy and Programs, who is supporting us with the back support. And we have a report of reports, and she's responsible for all the reports. So if there is any questions around IRDR or any other reports overlapping with our study, please feel free to ask those questions, and Elizabeth will be happy to answer those questions. And we have Scott Kelly, who is also supporting us on this program. We have several other leaders from DIR here, and the agenda and everything is blessed by our executive leadership team and our Executive Director Amanda Crawford. And we also have Andy Silva, who is our Program Director for Outreach, and I'm very happy to have her here. In order to kick this off, I now welcome John Hoffman and Nancy to go over the vision and why we do this and the details outlining the PCLS study.
Thank you, Krishna. This is John Hoffman, as you mentioned, CTO for DIR and interim state CIO. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We've had the instructions posted for a bit on the website, and we wanted to make sure and take this as an opportunity to go through as a webinar to provide more information. As you know, we are certainly available to answer any of the questions and things that you have, but we hope that this really covers the majority of any questions. We've done this for several years, and it's always been a very trusted document by the leadership and LBB as they try to understand all of the different projects and initiatives that the agencies are looking to do, and at the same time understand the budget and the constraints that we're all under. And the PCLS report is certainly not the only thing that drives the consideration of whether budgets are approved or not, but we feel that it is certainly something that is definitely considered as part of the LAR process. Each year that we do this, it evolves. I think back to some of the earlier versions, and it was relatively rudimentary compared to what it is today. But you know, there's a purpose behind that evolution and growth. We always try and look and make sure that it's not a bureaucratic kind of just questionnaire and trying to get more and more details, but really that there's value and understanding, and in the hopes that that information will provide the necessary information to get things approved. This year, you know, we are all being pushed to consider our budget and look at opportunities. We're going to do a webinar tomorrow on IT cost optimization. If anyone's interested in that, I'll put a plug in for that. But the spending and understanding of the value and the cost benefit is a huge component for this upcoming session, I am sure. And there's a section that I think Matt will cover here in just a little bit that talks about, in the legacy projects, talks about cost benefit. And make sure that you pay particular attention to that and understand how you can justify the cost and the expenditures against the state. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to introduce Nancy Rainasek, who is the state CISA.
Thank you, John, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what you're going to see in the questionnaire. First off, we've made some changes from past years, because in the past you could designate a project as cybersecurity and legacy or one or the other. And this year we've separated them out, so either one is cyber or one is legacy, not both. So that's very important to understand. And then we've given some definitions that a cybersecurity project has to be something that is specifically for cyber. It can't be, you know, just upgrading some system that will improve the cyber. It has to be specifically for cyber. And you'll hear more about that as we go through today's session. You'll also see that questions have changed, and towards the end, you'll see that there are more questions, in particular about cyber. So make sure that as you're planning your projects, that you go through that question set so you're prepared to answer those when you start the process of filling out these questionnaires. And that's about all I have. I'll be here and I'll be happy to answer any questions as we move forward, and thank you again for attending.
Thank you, Nancy. And this is mainly covers the background, you know, what we have done. And from 2014, we did the legacy system study. And then in 2016 was the first PCLS report. 2018, we did the second round, and I'm sure, you know, many of you have participated. So if you can give a raise your hand, see if you have participated in any of the previous study. That'll give us a quick idea of the audience, please. And you will see the hand icon, the hand raise icon on the panel. Like I can see, you know, the response, and Joey particularly asked me to, you know, look at the dashboard and then, you know, look at how many people. So about 63% of you have, you know, thank you for participating. That gives us a way to address the questions and also to answer, and also how to present and, you know, take this, you know, next 45 to 50 minutes forward. So the 2020, this is the current one, and the third PCLS study that we would be presenting towards LBB. And one of the major things, like John and Nancy mentioned this time, right, pay close attention to the budget cycle, because do more for less, and the separation of, you know, cybersecurity and then the legacy study. So those are the critical differences this year. And Matt, if you can go to the next slide, please. So this is already posted on the website. You know, Matt will pull that up, you know, shortly here. We have 6 sections. And while, you know, Matt, you know, pulls that instruction document, I can say that, you know, the part 1 is mainly the general information. you would be having about 24 questions, about the project, about the legacy, legislative appropriation request, etc. Part 2 is the business process and application information ask. Robert will cover that section for you, shortly after I finish this segment, where we have about 3 segments which will talk about the business application and then the processes. Part 3 is mainly the cybersecurity areas, and we have about 2 segments. You could talk about the cybersecurity threats, vulnerabilities, controls, procedures, and other safeguards in that segment. Part 4 is mainly the legacy issues. We have about 16 questions in there. This includes, items being refreshed, the business value of impacted systems, and the expected return on investment. Part 5 is where we gather information to determine the likelihood of an even project is not funded or a project failure, to make sure that that segment is also addressed in terms of moderate, high, will that particular situation happen or not. And we all know that given COVID, anything can happen to us, so if you're prepared, the better. And part 6 is the impact determination, that gathers around 8 questions, and then we should be able to have a total of about 59 questions. And as Nancy and John mentioned, we have cybersecurity projects and the legacy projects. So if you're interested in marking a project cybersecurity, you will have to address part 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. A total of about 43 questions. And if it is only legacy, you are looking at addressing part 1, 2, and 4. And Matt, do you want to bring up? This is already on the website. The link is provided on the section. You could take it. I would recommend you spend some time reading through and getting familiarized with each questions. You won't be able to answer on the SPECTRIM tool. Matt will walk you through how to enter the responses on the tool shortly. And those are, if you have any questions, please ask in the chat window. And then now I would like to pass it on to Robert, who will cover the next segment for us.
Just getting ready here. Hello, everyone. Actually, could you jump next couple of slides? One more. Hello, everyone. Robert Benajam here, and I'm going to talk to you briefly about business applications. First of all, a business application typically identified with a high-level label by an agency to easily identify a group of functions provided by one or more systems to accomplish the specific needs of the agency. Didn't say much there, right? Business applications are usually a combination of hardware, software, and data. They can be internally developed custom systems, commercial off-the-shelf software, and or customized third-party systems. We provide these definitions for guidance, but ultimately it's up to the agency to identify what their business applications are. As an example, some agencies have classified Salesforce as a business application because it's their content management system. But as you may know, Salesforce does more than that. Other agencies have identified it as a utility. It's a platform for development. So it's up to the agency as to what they have classified as business applications. Next slide, please. So as part of the IRDR, which should have been completed. If not, by all means, please complete. Agencies inventory their devices, servers, software, and applications. And they determine which business applications needed to be assessed. And that's the APM assessment section of the IRDR. So here we recommended that you update any business applications that were previously assessed and any new business applications to complete the assessment. So that brings us to the PCLS, so that then you can associate those business applications to the relevant project that you're submitting for. Next slide, please. So all applications associated with a PCLS project must, number one, have an APM assessment completed within the last 4 years and have the required fields completed in the application record. Extremely important, and you will be able to determine if the PCLS requirements have been met when you look at the, and Matt will show us hopefully in the demo where you can see this section. Very important, association of business applications. They are either directly related or indirectly related. For directly related, for example, we are going to migrate business application A to the cloud. So everything associated with that business application, servers, software, etc., will move it into the cloud. You would associate the business application directly there. Another example is we're going to, for an indirect, we're going to upgrade from Windows 95 to the latest and greatest Windows version out there. And so any business application that resides on these servers where you're migrating, you don't have to make any changes to the software, for example, any of the applications. So they are indirectly related because you are not dealing with the actual business application, but underlying infrastructure. Hope that's clear. Next slide, please. And here we're showing you a section of the related business applications. What you want to do here in the questions 201, 202, and 203 is associate the business applications with these, with the project. So we recommend that you look up the business applications because there may be more than one. And here's your opportunity to associate your business applications with your PCLS submission. And again, Matt will demonstrate this during the demo. Next slide, and that's all I have. I will hand it over to Matt. Yes.
Robert, there's a question. If a new business application, does it have to be listed in the IRDR report?
If you have new business applications, you should have identified those in the IRDR, and you should have created an APM assessment for.
You can still assess any new applications that might have been overlooked as part of the inventory process at any time. So if you wanted to do it now as part of PCLS, where you create a new business application in the portal and then assess it concurrently, then that's totally fine. I can give a little demo of how to do that as well. But in most cases, since we've got that historical context of where you actually went through and inventoried everything, and back in 2018 when you were required to do the APM assessments on those, they should already exist in the system, but if not, it's not a problem. You can just go through that process.
And if your PCLS requirements are not met for that business application, by all means, do go in, complete the assessment so that you will get a yes there, and then you can associate it.
Okay. And I will
Any other questions?
Go a little bit more in detail on that whenever I do the demo. So if we got more questions, we're trying to save some time for Q&A at the end as well. So feel free to type them in the chat. Okay, so parts 1 and 2 are applicable to all the project types. That's where you're going through, and in part 1, you're listing out the LAR information. So how much money are you asking for? What is this project actually about? You know, has it been denied in the past? All those kinds of things where we can get a sense for, have you requested money? You know, why was it denied, etc. And then in part 2, we're really looking at the functional aspects of what's associated with the project, either through that direct relationship in business applications, being, you know, we're modernizing this, we're replacing this, we're consolidating this, we're actually affecting the existence of the business application itself, and the indirect relationships. For instance, if you were trying to procure something that's going to give you better visibility into your overall application portfolio, that is not going to be a direct relationship with every single application that you have at your organization, but it is going to have some sort of impact in that it can promote the security and the legacy aspects of it when you're planning out your technical roadmaps. Part 3 is specific to the cybersecurity projects, and in this section, it is primarily your chance to do a narrative description of what the existing issues are relating to this project request. Maybe it's you don't have that visibility, or maybe you don't have the resources, or you know, you need to do a very PCI assessment against a certain system. So what's currently going on? What are your challenges? And what do you need to consider in the future relating to cybersecurity? If we don't do this project, are we going to be in a lot of trouble down the road? And then second question within this section, it's only 2 questions, but it's really narrative descriptions. What existing safeguards are in place? What controls do you have in there to mitigate or lessen the probability or impact of something bad happening to that system or application if this project weren't funded? So this is your chance to describe, what are your real problems right now? What are you doing to prevent it? And then down the road, future looking, what might we run into? So the 2 questions in here are, what's your problem with cybersecurity? And how are you handling it now? It's kind of an extension of that project narrative, but really focused on the information security aspects as it relates to this project. I'll just pass it right back over to either Krishna or Robert for the legacy part.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate your input there. So here, this is section 4, and this is only for the legacy piece. And if you're looking at only the cybersecurity angle, you don't have to go deep into this section. But it's pretty well good to prepare a storyline around what you are asking for. And mainly, what are the modernization benefits? What is the ROI? And we have provided a cost-benefit analysis and a methodology here as part of this segment. You could, fill in the, tables and get the right values for your project. And another critical factor here is the storytelling ability, the art piece. More than technology, more than finance, it's where the business story is communicated with some data points. How do you tell the story with the business and the data in mind? So you're equipped with both the sides and tell an inspirational story to the legislative budget board, so that when they look at the project, they're able to consider what is a business value that the particular project is bringing to the table. The next slide, please. And here you will do the same. You will talk about the benefit analysis, the quantitative project benefits, and this also provides a very high level view and also add number to it. So that's the main advantage of this section. And this section has got, like I mentioned in the earlier conversation, this has got about 16 questions, and I would certainly encourage that you form a core team where you pull in the business, pull in the legislative team or the legal team if you have, pull in security, everyone together, and jointly make a quick tiger team to tactfully attack the different nuances of the project from a business angle, technology, security, and also from a finance value where you can clearly articulate and provide the return on investment, and especially where you can show the legislative budget board and the legislature that you can do more for less. Next slide, please. Yeah, now I would like to pass it on to Matt, who will talk about this slide.
And just to piggyback off of what Krishna just spoke to there, the business case workbook that was on that last slide, that's something that's used by the Texas Project Delivery Framework as part of any QAT or quality assurance team projects that occur. And as part of that part 4, you're asked to identify what the benefits are. You're asked to quantify what the benefits are and what the costs are. And so we suggest using that framework since it's already been established and it's quite in-depth as part of whatever methodology you use to quantify that stuff. So that's why we kind of plugged it there. If you've got a different methodology that is quite defensible and you can still quantify the costs and benefits associated with the project, you don't have to use the business case workbook, but we put it there as a resource for everyone to really have a defensible methodology when it comes to quantifying both the costs and benefits of the project. So as Krishna had mentioned earlier, that part 4 is only for the projects that are determined to be legacy modernization projects. Parts 5 and 6, along with part 3, are for the cybersecurity projects only. And in these parts, they kind of go hand in hand, where you go through and you assess what is really the probability or the likelihood that a negative event is going to come about if this project is not funded. So there's usually that caveat before all these questions. If this project is not funded, or it might be about your existing approach to security with this. And you go through these high-level categories, and there's 7 questions in probability, 8 questions in impact. And this time around, we developed kind of a benchmark Likert scale for most of these, where it tells you this is the description of what this level looks like this is going to be a catastrophic impact to operation, or this is going to have significant financial impacts. So we break down these questions on these different categories. This is essentially what this is showing here. And most of you probably are familiar with a risk matrix where high probability, high impact equals high risk. That's essentially what we're trying to do here and make it as standardized as possible. Due to the varying missions and budgets and et cetera of all the organizations, you can't get in super granular detail, but we're really trying to benchmark those so we can compare across different organizations and different spectrums. So this goes into things like, do you have to be a top hacker to exploit the system? Do you have existing controls in place, and how reliable are they? Is this an internet-facing asset? How often are you attacked? Do you see a lot of scanning going on? And then on the impact side, what would happen if this was exploited? Would you lose a bunch of confidential data? Is there a incentive for somebody to try to access this data and sell it on the dark web? Would you be fined by regulatory bodies? All those kinds of things. And if you go through the instructions document, it's pretty self-explanatory. So I'm not going to dig too deep in there. But if you have any questions about those levels, then you can always reach out while you're going through there. Okay. Before I jump into the demo, are there any questions about the different parts and content? I'm not really seeing any. Okay, well, I'll just jump into it then. We got about 30 minutes left, so hopefully it doesn't take all this time. But first things first, you're going to start with logging into the system, which can actually be more challenging in some cases. But most IRMs, unless you're very new to your organization, you're already going to have an account, because this is where you went in and you did the information resources deployment review. Same with ISOs. And if you haven't logged in within about 60 days, or it's been quite a while since you logged in, then chances are your account is probably inactive, and you're going to have to reach out to us to have it manually reactivated so you can log in. So if you hit this reset password button and you don't receive an email within about 5 to 10 minutes, you shouldn't wait any longer. You should just reach out and we can check to see if it's inactive and reactivate it for you. But once you have established that your account is active and you get your password reset and all that kind of stuff, you're just going to navigate to the login authentication screen, which is dir.archer.rsa.com. The link is also provided in PowerPoint slides, and you can find it on our website. But once you're here, all you got to do is log in. And that's it. No, so demo over. Just kidding. When you log in, typically you're going to have one of 3 dashboards here, depending on your role. If you're the information security officer, we always try to set you up with the information security office home dashboard. And on here, you'll see things that relate most frequently to being an ISO. So things like incident reporting, security plan, etc. And since it's the responsibility of the IRM, or Information Resources Manager, to ensure that the PCLS questionnaires are submitted, it's going to look a little bit different if that's your role. So on the Information Resources Manager home dashboard, you'll see right here up at the top, it's got PCLS front and center, since that's kind of what's going on now. But you can also keep scrolling down and see your APM assessments, all your devices, assets, and the latest IRDR. If you're just a general user, then you might be directed to what we call just the home dashboard. And there's nothing really specific to your organization, because if you're just a general user, then it's typically going to be permission granted on a record-by-record basis. I'll get into that in just a minute when we get to the delegating aspect of this. But from the home page, when you log in, if you don't have this, that's quite all right. You can come up here to the Workspace navigation pane. You'll see each of these tabs up at the top, and these will take you to a specific dashboard depending on what you're trying to achieve here. If you don't have the PCLS Workspace tab displayed up at the top, you might have multiple workspaces, but you can't seem to find that one. This is kind of the overflow button here, this vertical ellipses, and this will show you the additional use cases or solutions that are available to you, but they're just not displayed due to size limitations. So in this case, PCLS is not on that default view, but if you click that, then it's going to pop up right there on that default view, and you can click that to get to the PCLS dashboard. That's about it for logging in. I believe next I was going to give you a little bit of a rundown on the navigation component of things. Just point out some things that might be helpful or not. So we just versioned up to RSA Archer 6.8, and in here I just found out about this today. I'm pretty excited about it. I just want to point it out because I'm already in here, but there's a new icon up at the top. It's called Activity, and if you click on that, you'll actually be able to see all the most recent records that you've entered into. So if you need to navigate to something that you know you were just in, you can click on that and go directly into it. From the home, if you don't like these dashboards that we have provided for you, you can actually edit your home page to be whatever it is. If you just click that edit icon, you'll see that this pops up. And from here, you can choose a workspace, which is those various solutions we have. Let's go with PCLS for this sake, and then the dashboard that you want. And we only have one for PCLS. So if I hit save now, every time that you log in, you're going to be directed to this dashboard. So if you're a user that really focuses only on incidents, or if you're only focused on IRDR, you can always change your home screen to be whichever dashboard you want it to be. So I just changed my home dashboard to be the Cyber Legacy Modernization Projects dashboard. Alternatively, if I wanted to get to this dashboard, I could have just clicked on the PCLS workspace itself. So this is your home base when it comes to all things PCLS. This is where you can manage the existing records. This is where you can create new PCLS records. If you've entered PCLS records in the past, over the last 2 sessions, you can also update the funding status to keep track of that and report on it through this system. Okay. Next, I wanted to talk briefly about support requests. Since you might be delegating out these records to people that don't have a Spectrum account, or they are inactive or something along those lines, you can open up a support request from within the system, and you won't have to directly email us. And then you can also keep track of when the support request was put in and when it was filled. And from almost every single page within the portal, you'll see up here on this quick links pane, a support request and Archer support dashboard. If you click the support request, this will take you to a support request record where you can put in information, your general information, the priority, your organization, which in most cases you're only going to have one option, but that's in some cases you might have more than one organization. So if somebody is locked out, you would just select request type, locked out, come here, put in their information, their email address, any additional comments that you want, and submit it, save, and close the record. That's automatically going to route an email to the support team, and we can fill it right there. If you can't get directly in there, or if you're trying to unlock your own account, you can always email us at grc@dir.texas.gov. But this system is intended to cut that step out where you can just submit a request directly from the system. Okay. All right. So next, I am going to show you how to create a new PCLS project questionnaire record in the system. So going back into Archer here, or Spectrum, I've navigated to the PCLS dashboard, and it's pretty simple. You can view all past or present records using this quick link, or if you wanted to create a new record, you can use this quick link here. Alternatively, you'll see this caret up on each of the workspaces. If you click on that little down arrow there and then click on the contents of whatever's in here, you can go directly to create a new record from anywhere in the system for that. You can search for existing records using this icon, or you can look at all the available canned reports or personal reports that are tied to your account. In this case, we want to create a new record. So I could either do it through this mechanism or I could do it directly through the dashboard. And I will do it through the dashboard since it's a prettier icon. And then once you click that, you're going to get proposed this question, what is your target organization? And in most cases, this is going to be only one selection option. For those of you that are joint ISOs or IRMs, you'll have to select the organization you actually want to create the project questionnaire record for. But in most cases, you'll just select it and hit apply. Okay, so once you've done that, you have now created a PCLS questionnaire record. And up at the top, you'll see that there's a unique ID that will be associated with this project questionnaire. And it says the session that is for. So if you go back in your historical records, you'll see an 86R or 85R, depending on what it is, your organization number, and then a 6-digit code that's unique to this key. This unique identifier right here is what's known as the Pcls Tracking Key. And that's going to be important later on because this is the piece of information that you need to copy and paste into your actual LAR items in ABEST. And that's how we keep track of whether or not a certain project is funded over the session. Things can change quite a bit, as I'm sure most of you know, but that's how we cut through all of the session markup that occurs. And then we can tie it back to say this one did get funded, it didn't get funded, and identify which projects are actually associated with which questionnaires. Okay, so up at the top here, you'll notice there are a few what are called action buttons. You've got edit, view, save, and save and close. And then over here on the far right, you'll see a little X icon. This X icon called close essentially takes you back to the last screen you were on. So it's important not to use your browser's back buttons or your browser's forward and back buttons because it can time out the session. You're going to want to use that if you need to exit out of a record to get back to where you were or navigate it that way. There are also these functions up at the top. This is a save icon, similar to just hitting save here, but you have several others as well. I'll show you how to export after you've submitted all the details. In the end, you can also share via email directly, so you can link the actual URL to this record and have somebody go directly to it rather than having them navigate through the system to get there. And depending on your access, you can print or delete. We restrict delete, so if you need to actually delete a record, you should reach out to us and we'll take care of it. If you enter into an existing record or something like that, you might end up in view mode. And the difference between these two things is in view mode, you're not allowed to edit any of the data. You actually aren't going to be able to see any of the response options. You'll just see anything that was already populated in the record itself. So if you enter a record and you're like, well, I can't edit anything or I can't input any details, make sure that you're actually in the edit mode. And if you can't enter into the edit mode, then you might not have the appropriate permissions, and you can always reach out and we can make sure that you have the right access. So that is creating a new PCLS record in a nutshell. Next, I wanted to talk briefly about delegating a record. So the access groups define whether or not you can create a new PCLS project questionnaire. If you belong to the IRM group, the Information Security Office group, then you have the permission to create a new PCLS record. If you're just a general user, then you won't have the ability to create a new record and you won't have the ability to see the existing records. And for that to occur, they need to be delegated a specific PCLS questionnaire. So if you have a project manager that is dealing with a specific project and you want them to go into the system and enter all the details, then you can do that if they have a SPECTRIM account itself. And there's no limits on the number of users that can be associated with your organization. So if you just want somebody to go in and fill it out, then that's completely fine. You can do so by requesting it through that support request feature that I talked about earlier, or you can email grc@dir.texas.gov. And in this case, in the general information section, you can just come in and click the ellipses next to delegated to. That's a Google Chrome issue. I'll mention that in just a second, but and then type in their information to try to find the user. If the user doesn't populate in the search results here, then they might not have an account, or their account may be inactive. So if that's the case, you can reach out again and we'll make sure that they can be selected as somebody to delegate it to. This case, I'm going to say this general user account is going to be the delegate. And if that person only has general user access, next time they log in, they'll actually be able to come in and see this record. And as part of that, they will receive this email, provided their account is active, and it will say you've been delegated as the author of this PCLS project questionnaire. You can link directly to it, and it will tell you who the person is that created it, along with some general support information. So it's got some automated workflows in there to help you out with that process. And just a side note on there, anytime you see this little question mark next to a field, it means that there's some help text behind that field. And if you click on it, there's going to be a dialog box that pops up, and this is going to describe what we mean by that field. So in this case, the PCLS record creator is automatically going to be the submitter, but you can farm out that work to whoever is in your organization that has an active account. This process is totally optional. You don't have to have anybody in the delegated to field, and you don't have to have anybody in the reviewer field. These are for your workflow purposes only. Same goes for due date. If you wanted to assign it to somebody, like a staff member, and say, I want this to have a week-long turnaround, you could do that there. There are a few required fields that you need to input before you can actually save and close the record and assign the delegate to it. So I'm just going to go through a few here. I believe it's just the name, but the system will tell you if you get it wrong. And then you can click Save and Close or Save. Right, so it's just the name. So now you've actually saved that questionnaire record. You can go back into the system at any time and you can re-access it. So returning to an existing record, I'll cover this one real quick and then I'll get back into looking up the business applications and so forth. Okay, from the dashboard here, you can come down and see all the projects relating to this cycle of PCLS. Alternatively, if you want to click it down and see all of the records from historical as well as current, you can do that here. The one that I just created is test, but I'm going to go into, let's do the cybersecurity one. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, this time around when I selected that record, it ended up in default in view mode. Since I want to edit this now, maybe I've gone out and collected some additional information about the project and I'm actually ready to input some information. You can just click edit and it's going to open it up to entering information again. Okay, so going through this here, depending on what you select as the project type, it's going to populate the required sections. So in this case, it is a cybersecurity project. And you'll notice that part 3, the cybersecurity issues and controls, is there, as well as parts 5 and 6. If I were to select legacy, you'd notice that part 4 is there, but not parts 5, 6, or 3. Now looking at the business applications part here. So this is where you do your associations to anything that exists in the system currently. On the related applications, you've got directly related applications and indirectly related applications. If you come over here and you select lookup, I'll mention this now. If you're using Google Chrome version 83, there's an issue where dialog boxes may not automatically populate with content. If you just X out of it and then click it again, it typically works for me. Sometimes you'll have to do it a couple times. If it continues to do it, then I would suggest just using a different browser. For the time being, they are aware of this issue and they're going to work on it, but sometimes it takes 2 or 3 tries to click out of it. But once you do get that populated up, you'll see a list of all the applications or business applications that are associated with your organization. And currently, we've got this SPECTRIM test application associated with this project. You could also go ahead and click, if there are multiple applications that are associated with it, highlight as many as apply and hit OK. And here, you'll see that it populates a report view of all the applications that are related to this project questionnaire, and it's got some indicators as to whether or not the PCLS requirements have been met. In this case, you can tell that this ServiceNow IT ticketing application has not met the requirements, and that is because the most recent completed APM assessment has not been fulfilled. So there has been no APM assessment associated with this application. In this case, you've kind of got two options. One, you can go ahead and launch an APM assessment for it, and then you'll go through and assess it from the technical, business, financial, and architectural standpoints, and that way you'll actually be able to associate it with it. Or you can remove it from this project questionnaire, and you can just go ahead and submit the associations with any applications that actually meet that criteria. If it is a directly related application, I would suggest actually going through that APM process, because you want to provide as much info as possible in order for us to make a good decision on how to prioritize this thing. So this is your indicator here, and you might want to plan the workloads accordingly, because for every application that doesn't meet this criteria, there's going to be another process that's involved where you actually have to go through the APM assessment steps so that you can associate it with your project questionnaire. There are statuses up in the general section that will indicate where you are in the process. For instance, if I were to save this record, the PCLS submission status would change to awaiting APM application assessments, because there are one or more applications associated with this project that don't meet the criteria, the minimum criteria for you to be able to actually submit it. So that is associating the business applications. Make sure that you're using the lookup to identify if those applications currently exist in the system, because you don't want to create duplicate records by adding a new one. And if they aren't in the system, that's okay. We had that question earlier that you can add an application, but for you to associate it with the PCLS questionnaire, it will have to meet those minimum requirements. That is, having an APM assessment completed within the last 4 years and having the required fields filled out in the application itself. It's not a gargantuan amount of work to do that, but it's something definitely to be aware of, because we need that information in order for us to draw the appropriate conclusions. All right, and then quickly I will talk about actually submitting a PCLS project record. So I'm just going to X out of this one because I've got one ready to go to submit. And I'll use the dashboard to navigate to the list of all the existing PCLS records. All right, and then we'll just go ahead and click the cybersecurity project that I was just in. Go back into edit mode. You'll see up at the top here under the PCLS submission status, it's got a hyperlink to in process with submitter. If you click that hyperlink, it's going to populate some context as to what that status means and what you need to do. So in this case, the questionnaire record is saved, but the content has not been submitted to move on to the next stage. And you can come back and edit it at any time. So that's informative. Again, these fields are optional. You don't have to have a reviewer on it. And if I go through here and make sure that all the questions are filled out appropriately, that all the associated applications have met the requirements to be submitted, looks like that's the case. And then down at the bottom it says scroll up to the PCLS agency action and click in process to finalize. So if you go back up to the top, you're going to see right here under the general information what you want to do with it next. So in this case, we want to go ahead and just finalize it. It'll automatically populate the submit date, and then I'm going to save the record, but I'm not going to save and close it in this case because I want to view the status change. So the difference between save and close is pretty intuitive. Save saves any changes you've made to the record, but keeps you in the record itself. Save and close does the same thing, but it will take you back to whatever screen you were on before that. And as you can see here, the PCLS submission status has updated to awaiting submission to LBB. Again, if you click on that, it will provide you with this information. You've submitted it to DIR via Spectrum, so we've got your questionnaire record fully submitted. But the next step in that process is actually taking this Pcls tracking key and submitting it to the LBB via ABEST via your legislative appropriations request. So once that piece of the puzzle is all done, you'll be able to come back into the record and you'll be able to identify that yes, we have submitted it with our LAR, or no, we haven't. We actually decided we're not going to ask for the funding for this. We just wanted to go through the PCLS process. So once you hit yes, that you have submitted it to LBB, you select the date that you've done that, and then you can go ahead and save and close again. And this is the ending of the entire process. So now when you come back up here, you'll see the status Pcls tracking key submitted to LBB, and the record will be read-only, and you'll be able to go view it, but you won't be able to make any updates or edits to it at that point. And final demonstration part before we get to a bit of a Q&A here. I want to show you how to export the details of a specific questionnaire. Perhaps if somebody doesn't have a Spectrum account and you just want to show them the information that you submitted outside of the system. Typically, this is going to happen in management reports or something along those lines. So that was the wrong record, but let me go into the one that we submitted to LBB. Okay. So once you're here, this record will be read-only because it's been actually submitted. But if you come up to the top and you select the little rectangle here, you can actually export it to a variety of formats. Typically, it's going to work best with this kind of setup in PDF or in Word. But if you click that, it will run a job and automatically create an export that you can then save, pass it around, and format it however you want. This is an example export here, where you can actually go through just in regular Word. You can edit, add comments if you want, translate it from Latin to English, and you can see what you responded to each of the questions. And I believe that's it for the demo here. Again, if anybody has any questions, you can always feel free to reach out. And yeah, I think that's about it. I've got some notes in this PowerPoint slide. I've already mentioned most of this stuff, so I'm not going to cover it right here. The submission process, we kind of highlight it here. You want to identify which projects are applicable, which ones actually meet the definition of a legacy modernization project, as well as a cybersecurity project, and you determine the type. You want to identify any existing business applications. Are you missing any? Are there some that don't have APM assessments completed on them? Is everything filled out appropriately? And then you can go in, actually do the questionnaire, fill out the details, figure out who's going to do it, submit it in Spectrum, and then take that unique ID, submit it with your LAR, and then finally come back and update the questionnaire record to say that it's been fully submitted to LBB. There's explanations of all the statuses here. That's quite a bit of text. Definitely not going to get into that, but again, anytime you have questions, you can always reach out to grc@dir.texas.gov or pcls@dir.texas.gov, and we'll be happy to walk you through the process.
Hey, Matt, there is a question.
Okay.
The question is, how do we handle cybersecurity projects not directly related to a business application? Would we need to select all business applications impacted directly if there are any?
So it'd be recommended that you don't have to have an application that's directly related to a project questionnaire. We just implemented that so that we can differentiate between the applications that are proposed to be fully replaced or modernized or consolidated, and those that are going to have a secondary benefit. So in part 2, we actually have a question that says this affects the entire application portfolio of the organization. So if you selected yes on that, then we would take that into consideration. So it's really up to your organization if you want to associate all of those indirectly associated applications at that point. And if that doesn't make sense, we can take it offline and have a discussion on it.
Thank you, Matt. One area that I did not cover was the project area in detail, and that, thank you, Joy, for pulling in Tom. Hey, Tom, you want to quickly cover the tools and how to access them, and then a high-level overview in a minute or two, please.
We do have another question. We do have another question.
Island, just real quick, I missed the first part of that question. Are you asking about the project delivery framework?
Yeah, it's that one.
Sure. So again, this is Tom Nyland with DIR and part of the quality assurance team. Earlier on in the presentation, it showed the costs and benefits suggestions, and I think Matt mentioned that's coming from the project delivery framework. And so those are the requirements that we use for major information resources projects. As Matt indicated, y'all can use that for this or whatever you do internally, but we'd be happy to help out. You can just shoot me an email, but those documents, those templates are in our business case package, and that's can be found. I'll put it in the chat, but it's the dir.texas.gov website /project framework, and that'll take you to the framework page. And I don't want to take up your time, but I'll put my email out there. We'd be happy to walk you through any of those cost benefit analysis templates and get you going.
Thank you, Tom. Robert, you had another question, right?
There's a question here. Can we submit the BCW, which we are completing for the major information projects, for ABEST? Who can answer that one?
So BCW, I think it stands for Business Case Workbook. I believe there's an attachment field in there if you want to describe the methodology as part of that. You can reach out directly to me. I've worked with this person in the past, and we will figure that out. But yeah, if you're using the Business Case Workbook as part of your methodology, the methodology description is a required field within SPECTRIM. But if you were to attach that along with some sort of narrative description that this is our methodology, that would suffice. So that's something that is probably more of a fringe case, and we can handle on a one-to-one basis.
And Robert, you want to cover how the final analysis report will be shared with the agencies and what the process for that would be?
Well, thanks for the surprise there, Krishna. Appreciate it. Wasn't ready for that question. Well, once all the submissions have been done, we will then analyze, run all the results through a process, which we will then provide back to each of the agencies with the report of how they ranked in each of the categories, whether it's cyber or application prioritization.
Okay, I think we only got about 2 minutes left, but if you have any additional questions, you can pose them via email and we will return them as soon as possible. Again, we are going to send out a copy of the slides or post them to our website along with the recording. So, yeah, Krishna, do you have any words to wrap up?
No, thank you, everyone. And if there are any more questions, reach out to us. We are at the top of the hour. I want to thank all the organizers, Joy, Elizabeth, everyone, for supporting, and for Tom to step in, and for John and Nancy to give us that high-level overview and vision, how everything tie into the overall, objective. And for all attendees, I know it's the top of the hour for you all, but I really appreciate you all taking the time and joining us. And we will provide the deck for you all to look at, and also would post this recording as well. Thank you, everyone. And if you have any questions, reach out to us. If not, we look forward to working with you all. Thank you.